want to welcome you guys out this evening to the wonderful Village Well bookstore and cafe. Can we give a round of applause, for our lovely Village Well cafe?
All right.
I see a lot of people have already been to the cafe, including myself. So I want to introduce and welcome you to this wonderful special event. We're having a conversation about misinformation tonight. And we know misinformation is running rampant. It is getting harder and harder to differentiate fact from fiction, truth from mistruth. And we are in a world where we need facts and truth more than ever, especially in my world of healthcare, where we are completely being gutted ever since the pandemic about the importance of things like vaccines. People are getting information from non-evidence-based practice sources. It's driving us crazy. So this is more relevant than ever. I want to thank all of you for coming. And so I want to bring you this wonderful opportunity to hear from Samuel Spitale, who wrote this book, How to Win the War on Truth. And actually, you would think that I went hunting from him, but he found us. And he wanted to come and speak with us because he was trying to get more information about propaganda and get this into the local communities. And I thought right now, it's like, oh my God, absolutely perfect. And not only did we want to do it on a Zoom, we want to do it in person because we heard you. You guys want more in-person events. We heard you.
Yes.
So I want to turn this over and get this wonderful information and this talk started, where we're going to really dive into the social media side. And people think social media is just, that's the young people. Those are those millennials. Those are those Gen Zs. Actually, data is showing more baby boomers are involved in social media, but are also most vulnerable to the scam social media and the propaganda social media kind of spread. So this is definitely going to be relevant, multi-generational information, okay? So I want to introduce you to Samuel Spitale, and I will let him have the mic.
Thank you for the introduction. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Like she said, I'm Samuel C. Spitale, author of How to Win the War on Truth. But tonight I'm going to talk about the spread of misinformation, particularly as it pertains to social media. So social media once promised to bring users together in the digital space, but instead it's been used to spread disinformation, sow division, and radicalize impressionable minds in an increasingly insulated media environment. So I'm going to discuss how we got here, who benefits from all the discord, and I'll leave you with a few pointers on how to recognize these messages that are designed to deceive us. So as Americans, we encounter anywhere from 4,000 to 10,000 media messages a day. And the average American checks their cell phone about 150 times a day. Wow. We've never had more access to information, yet few of us can differentiate the news from the noise. And there is a hell of a lot of noise. What was supposed to be the information age has instead become an age of misinformation. From welfare queens to WMDs, climate change to critical race theory, and the war on drugs to the war on Christmas, much of what Americans believe is more mistruth than truth, and that's by design. So my book, How to Win the War on Truth, is an illustrated guide to debunking all the mistruths that cloud the media landscape. It exposes the secrets of media manipulators in the ongoing battle to get inside our brains and sway public opinion. In short, it's a crash course in media literacy to help us become more savvy media consumers. And that means learning to recognize propaganda. So propaganda is defined as any information that is biased or misleading. It's used to promote a particular point of view. In the simplest of terms, propaganda tries to sell us something, be it antacid or anti-Semitism. The word propaganda comes from the church. It literally means to spread the faith, not spreading the truth or spreading the facts, but spreading things someone wants us to take on faith. Because at the time, the church was trying to fight the spread of something that threatened its power. Protestantism. So the principles of propaganda have their roots in the field of psychology, particularly in the mind of Sigmund Freud. Freud was the father of psychoanalysis, and he devoted his life to studying human behavior and subconscious desire. Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, used his uncle's insights to influence public opinion through the mass media, that is, TV, radio, print, or any other medium used to communicate to the masses. In the process, Bernays gave birth to the modern propaganda industry. We understand the mechanisms and motives of the group minds, Bernays wrote, Is it not possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without them knowing it? So consider, women didn't smoke cigarettes until Bernays branded them torches of freedom and capitalized off the suffrage movement. We didn't begin our day with bacon and eggs until Bernays gave us the idea. Nor did we consume paper cups until Bernays scared us into thinking that drinking glasses could be unsanitary. In the 1920s, when women shortened their hair into bobs and stopped buying hairnets, Bernays convinced health officials to require food workers to wear hairnets to increase sales. It had absolutely nothing to do with hygiene. Bernays was so adept at propaganda that United Fruit Company, later known as Chiquita Bananas, hired him to run a campaign that helped overthrow democratically elected government or president of Guatemala. This is where the term Banana Republic comes from. So Bernays' principles of propaganda were so successful, others across the globe soon realized their potential. To whom has propaganda to appeal? To the scientific intelligentsia or to the less educated masses? It has to appeal forever and only to the masses. Any guess who said that? Any history buffs in here? Adolf Hitler. Now that guy could propagate some things, as did his minister of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels. They both believed that if you repeat a lie often enough, it essentially becomes the truth. A scholar of German history, Benjamin Carter Het, has written, the key to understanding why so many Germans supported Hitler lies in the Nazis' rejection of a rational, factual world. Among the Weimar Republic's more fatal defects was that millions of its people deeply believed things that were verifiably untrue. Sound familiar?
Yes.
So Hitler and Goebbels' manipulation tactics were so successful, they gave propaganda a bad name. After the World Wars, the name was changed. Anyone know what the name was changed to?
Psyops.
Nope. Public relations.
Wow.
So all modern forms of public relations are essentially propaganda. That includes marketing, advertising, publicity, branding, and political communication. So all propaganda has the intent to sell something, even if no money changes hands. Whether that something is a product, a policy, a politician, or just a belief. Because someone always benefits from people buying into that propaganda. That's what separates it from mere information. So think the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. That marketing slogan is sold by the gun lobby. It was developed by the NRA's advertising agency, Ackerman McQueen. Think the Civil War was fought over states' rights and not slavery. That bit of PR was sold by the United Daughters of the Confederacy. Think tax cuts stimulate the economy. That's promoted by corporations trying to avoid paying taxes. Think voter fraud is rampant, that vaccines cause autism, or that a border wall would stop illegal immigration. All propaganda. But the more these ideas are repeated, the more we buy into them, just like our favorite brands of cola or cake mix. So when there was only traditional media, like radio, TV, newspapers, and magazines, it was somewhat easier to identify which messages sought to inform us and which were trying to sell us something. You know, when we turned on the evening news, we knew we were getting news. When we watched a primetime TV show, we knew it was entertainment. And when that show took a commercial break, we knew that was advertising. But today, those lines have never been more blurred. They all look the same in our social media feeds. Worse, media outlets that call themselves news are now some of the largest disseminators of propaganda. The main reason for this is deregulation. Most notably, the Reagan administration overturning the FCC's fairness doctrine. It had once required that news broadcasters present controversial issues with equal airtime for both sides of the argument. Thus, partisan programming had previously been unlawful. But after the fairness doctrine was struck down in 1987, right-wing shock jocks flooded the radio almost overnight with one-sided commentary, like Rush Limbaugh, who went into syndication within a matter of months. For long, conservative voices on the radio outnumbered liberal voices by a measure of 10 to 1. In 1996, Australian media mogul Rupert Murdoch, who had been cozying up to the Reagan administration with fawning press coverage to grease the wheels of media ownership in the US, partnered with former Nixon political strategist Roger Ailes to bring that talk radio format to cable TV. So their brainchild was Fox News, a propaganda outlet disguised as a news network, which is why surveys consistently show that their viewers know less about current events than those who watch no news at all. The conception of such a network originated in the Nixon administration in a document called "A Plan for Putting the GOP on TV News," because Nixon thought that the press treated him unfairly by accurately reporting on all of his crimes, which he thought was just a PR problem. And the way to deal with the PR problem was just to produce your own PR and make viewers think it was news. So Roger Ailes' notes are all over that document from the Nixon White House. So then along came the internet, which has democratized the sharing of information as well as propaganda. The internet has become our primary source of news gathering. Now all that noise threatens to overwhelm actual news. Thanks to our smartphones and social media, this problem is only exacerbated because all that noise can travel faster and further than ever before. In fact, fake news stories spread about 6 times faster than genuine news stories. So when it debuted, social media was heralded as a democratic tool that helped launch the Arab Spring. However, since 2010, democracies around the globe have been backsliding, even in countries that participated in the Arab Spring uprising. So the internet, with the help of social media, has created an information environment that's devoid of gatekeepers and full of self-reinforcing echo chambers, easily exploited by bad actors, as now anyone with a Wi-Fi password and a grudge can generate propaganda. So as political scientist Barbara F. Walter has written, as social media began penetrating countries and gaining a larger share of people's attention, a clear pattern emerged. Ethnic factions grew, social divisions widened, resentment at immigrants increased, bullying populists got elected, and violence also began to increase. So why did this pattern emerge when it did? Any guesses? Anybody know? So in 2009, Twitter introduced the retweet button, and Facebook introduced the like button, allowing them to track the types of posts that are most popular with users. Then Facebook, Google, and YouTube began using a new algorithm based on those likes. So this new algorithm didn't show viewers the latest posts from their family and friends, but content that was most likely to hook them based on stuff they previously liked, in the hope of increasing user engagement. Because the more users engage with online content, the longer they stay on those platforms, which means the more advertising dollars those social media companies can collect, gathering more and more behavioral data about all the users and their interests. So what type of content do users most engage with? To quote Barbara F. Walter again, it turns out that what people like the most is fear over calm, falsehood over truth, outrage over empathy. People are far more likely to like posts that are incendiary than those that are not, creating an incentive for people to post provocative material in the hopes that it will go viral. So with the introduction of the like button, individual Facebook users were suddenly being rewarded for posting outrageous, angry content, whether it was true or not. Therefore, the most engaging content were posts that activated negative emotions like anger, hate, and resentment. The greater the arousal, the more likely users were to share those incendiary posts. That's because negative emotions are significantly more powerful than positive emotions, what cognitive scientists call our negativity bias. So our tendency to react more strongly to negative stimuli than positive stimuli, because negative emotions activate our fight or flight response, which is part of our evolutionary hardwiring that makes us keenly responsive to danger. It's a shortcut in the brain that essentially overrides critical thinking. Because when threatened by danger, our ancestors had to decide immediately whether to fight or to flee. Thus, fear was beneficial to our survival. Our brains still operate this way today. So when our fight or flight response is triggered, we fail to think or reason, only to feel, which leads us to type an angry comment or share an indignant post without bothering to question the information that we're sharing. So these algorithms never show us less emotionally engaging content. In order to keep us online, they are programmed to show us content that is more and more emotionally violent. So this means that, for instance, if you're a mother worried about vaccinations that may harm your child, what's going to keep you online more? An article by the CDC that says vaccines are safe and effective? Or an anti-vax site spreading fears that vaccines may cause autism? and that there's a global conspiracy trying to keep this information from the public. So you should coordinate online with other concerned parents. As one sociologist discovered when she researched footage of Trump rallies on YouTube, the algorithms would start auto-playing white nationalist videos that grew more and more racist with each video. The more videos she watched, the more violent and extreme the videos became. So this is how right-wing provocateurs like Alex Jones get so much traction online. The more emotional the content, the further it travels. And it doesn't matter whether the content is true or even harmful, because as part of the Communications Decency Act of 1996, Congress included a section that absolved tech companies of liability from anything posted on their platforms. So this means they are not held accountable for distributing lies, propaganda, or even hate speech that bullies teens to commit suicide. So don't be fooled by the theatrics of senators chewing out Mark Zuckerberg in the halls of Congress, accusing them of not doing anything about the problem. These tech companies are just following the law. So if Congress wanted to stop this abuse, they could simply repeal Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act and hold service providers to the same standard as print media. But much like with the absence of the fairness doctrine, those same politicians often benefit from the lies being spread. So enter Steve Bannon. So Bannon took over the right-wing website Breitbart.com when its founder, Andrew Breitbart, died in 2012. Breitbart and Bannon both believe that if you want to change politics, you first have to change culture. So Bannon set about turning Breitbart into a platform to cultivate a new alt-right that would be defined by white nationalism and reject progressive values in American culture. So this happened to coincide with Gamergate in 2014. You guys remember Gamergate? You know what I'm talking about? So for those who don't remember, Gamergate started after a female game developer released a video game about fighting her depression. Her disgruntled ex-boyfriend tried to drive her out of the gaming industry by harassing her online with rape and death threats. As other female gamers tried to expose the misogyny of the gaming industry and fight for greater diversity in the field, male gamers launched a coordinated campaign of bullying against this so-called feminist ideology to preserve the male-dominated turf of the gaming industry. So Bannon saw that outrage manufactured by these involuntary male celibates, or incels, and thought he could harness their hostility for his alt-right culture war. So Bannon was joined by the right-wing billionaires, the Mercer family, who owned Breitbart. And in 2014, they funded a data analytics firm called Cambridge Analytica, which illicitly harvested all of our Facebook data that had been collected through those new algorithms. So their goal with all this data mining was to find individuals who exhibited the dark triad of personality disorders. You guys know what that is? So the dark triad of personality disorders is narcissism, sociopathy, and Machiavellianism, or manipulativeness. So these were the personalities that would be most likely to be authoritarian and engage in antisocial behavior, like, say, hate crimes, harassment, and bullying, and breaking the law. So Steve Bannon, now Cambridge Analytica's vice president, knew that people who feel disconnected from society, like those disgruntled gamers, are highly susceptible to propaganda and conspiratorial thinking. So they targeted these individuals for their needs. And since the widespread use of smartphones, young males in particular have withdrawn socially more and more of their life is now online, which has led to less socialization in real life and a sense of community, and more of a sense of community in the online world or gaming world, thus making adolescents the most vulnerable to online recruitment into radical political movements that offer moral clarity and a moral community, thereby pulling them further and further away from their in-person communities. So Bannon and crew help authoritarian politicians like Donald Trump in the US and the lead EU Brexit campaign in the UK target those voters most vulnerable to fascist propaganda, those with personality disorders that made them susceptible to authoritarianism. And they tailored their messages to their biases that were revealed by all that Facebook data. So these media messages stoked fear and hate against minority groups, not just women, but immigrants, LGBTQ, Jews, Muslims, basically anyone perceived as different by the dispossessed white male. So Cambridge Analytica even hired the very people they sought to oppress, namely Black people, gays and lesbians, immigrants, and other peoples of color, so they could weaponize their insights and experiences. They targeted those people with ads, luring them to Facebook pages that the firm had set up to test out which media messages work best. They marketed test slogans like "Drain the Swamp" and "Make America Great Again." This was before they became household words, to see which would resonate most with their target demo. So they even experimented with ways to provoke people's racism or sexism and encourage them to organize around these grievances, as we saw with white nationalist marches in Charlottesville and elsewhere. So they also targeted African Americans with anti-Hillary Clinton propaganda to discourage their voter turnout in the 2016 election and to push them to vote for third-party candidates like Jill Stein. So these were all so-called dark posts, non-public posts that only they would see. They'd be invisible to researchers or anyone else looking at their feeds. So according to Facebook whistleblower, Sarah Lynn Williams, Facebook even embedded staff in Trump's campaign team in San Antonio for months, alongside Trump's campaign programmers, copywriters, media buyers, network engineers, and data scientists, basically inventing a new way for a political campaign to, quote, shitpost its way to the White House, targeting voters with misinformation, inflammatory posts, fundraising messages, and voter suppression campaigns. So these divisive messages were amplified by the Internet Research Agency, which is a Russian troll farm set up by the Kremlin in 2013, whose message was to use social media, whose mission, was to use social media to influence public debate in foreign countries by stoking existing tensions to sow discord and weaken democratic institutions. So during the 2016 election, Russia's own disinformation spread to at least 126 million people on Facebook, with over 76 million likes and comments, and at least 20 million people on Instagram, with over 187 million likes and comments. And Russia sent at least 10 million tweets on Twitter. Russian operatives targeted conservatives with posts on immigration, race, and gun rights, and they sought to undermine participation by Black voters by extensively spreading misinformation about the electoral process. Fake Russian accounts targeted everyone, from NRA members to the LGBTQ community, from Black Lives Matter protesters to Texas secessionists. Russia accounts even organized a series of Trump rallies that supporters attended, and one of Trump's sons even retweeted a post from the Kremlin-operated account on election day. So these bad actors, from Bannon to Russia, succeeded in radicalizing isolated young men with more extremist beliefs, just like Fox News has done to America's aging white population for decades. So Fox has long employed several of Adolf Hitler's key propaganda directives, particularly 1, appeal to negative emotions, 2, repeat falsehoods, and 3, direct anger at an adversary, the very same tactics that Bannon used through Cambridge Analytica. So when the world shut down during the COVID-19 pandemic, we became more isolated, spending more time online, which only worsened this problem and gave people a lot more stuff to be angry about, especially since cable news and social media drummed up outrage over COVID protocols. So once an online information silo is established, whether it's scrolling through Fox News posts on Facebook or watching a Chris Rufo video on YouTube, it's reinforced by that algorithm. That algorithm is going to keep showing you stuff based on what you've already seen and agree with, not stuff that challenges your viewpoint. So this even holds true when it comes to, quote, doing your own research, because our belief system shapes the algorithm, which shapes our search query results, which in turn reinforce those beliefs. So, which is why if I search on Google for, say, critical race theory, I'll probably get an academic article from a law school where it's taught, because I'm always researching scholarly articles. But someone who follows Chris Rufo or Fox News will probably be led to a page by the Heritage Foundation, full of racially coded fear-mongering. Or if I Google information on vaccines and autism, I'll very likely get an expose debunking the myth. But a conspiracy theorist will not. They'll be led to a site that reinforces their conspiratorial beliefs. So those self-reinforcing algorithms are why right-wing figures so often encourage their audience to do their own research, because the very fact that they're listening to that voice is already going to determine the results they get when they do their search. And their listeners are none the wiser, feeling vindicated now in those false beliefs. So right-wing media is full of conspiracy theories and propaganda. In fact, it is its defining feature. Research shows that most mainstream media outlets share an interconnected web of content that is consistently faithful to the objective standards of journalism, or at least it was before last year. But right-leaning outlets create a media ecosystem fueled not by journalists, but by shock jocks and conspiracy theorists who traffic in rumor, innuendo, and outright propaganda in order to reinforce an ideological brand narrative. Now, that's not to say traditional media has not failed us miserably in the age of Trump, because it most certainly has. But often it's because they platform those partisan propagandists and amplify the lies instead of puncturing them, all in the name of so-called balance. Or it's because they've routinely failed to platform nonpartisan experts to cut through the noise and contextualize what's happening. Or because they failed repeatedly to hold the powerful accountable. I could go on and on, but that's a whole other discussion. The point of all this divisive propaganda is that wannabe authoritarians and their enablers are using social media and other information systems to divide the electorate for political gain by appealing to ethnic, racial, or religious differences, pitting men against women, straight against gay, natural-born citizens against immigrants, or Christians against Jews or Muslims. So dividing the population into us and them is a defining feature of fascism. We are the real Americans, white, Christian, hardworking taxpayers. They are illegal immigrants, refugees, welfare recipients, drag queens, Muslims, Antifa, or some other powerless scapegoat that's turned into a dangerous enemy. Because by dividing people into tribes of us versus them, and then dehumanizing them, we don't have to feel bad about how we treat them. It brings us to another defining feature of fascism, political violence. Because all that anger stirred up online doesn't stay online. It can lead to violence in real life, just like it did in the 1990s when talk radio's hate-fueled anti-government commentary helped provoke a white power militia movement of violent extremists like Timothy McVeigh. Today, the radicalization happens on the internet. One study found that towns with higher than average Facebook use reliably experienced more attacks on refugees. This held true in virtually any sort of community, big or small, affluent or struggling, liberal or conservative. Wherever per person Facebook use rose by one standard deviation above the national average, attacks on refugees increased by about 35%. And whenever internet access went down in an area with high Facebook use, attacks on refugees dropped significantly. Most distressing, according to another Facebook whistleblower, Frances Haugen, who disclosed tens of thousands of internal company documents and testified before the British Parliament and the US Senate about the company's practices, Facebook was well aware that their algorithms were amplifying hate speech and propaganda and radicalizing impressionable minds worldwide. Their own research showed as much. And they knew that bad actors were abusing the platform to undermine democratic norms, even leading to a round of suicide bombings and executions in India, which then spilled over into a genocide in Myanmar, prompted by a fabricated Facebook post about a Muslim man raping a Buddhist woman, which they refused to take down. And when they finally did take action and remove the posts, they ended up removing more posts by civil society groups and peace activists than government and anti-Muslim accounts. So in the Philippines, authoritarian President Rodrigo Duterte weaponized Facebook's algorithm to propel himself to power by spreading political propaganda disguised as news sources, which sowed fear and doubt in the electorate, and which was amplified by bots, fake accounts, and his own campaign volunteers. Filipina journalist Maria Reza alerted Facebook, but once again, they chose to do nothing. Facebook, according to Haugen, said that they realized that if they changed the algorithm to be safer, people would spend less time on the platform and they'll click on less ads and thus make less money. So since 2016, threats against members of Congress have increased tenfold, and white nationalists have attacked Jewish synagogues, burned mosques, engaged in mass shootings of immigrants and African Americans, drove vehicles into peaceful protesters, plotted to kill FBI agents, shot up Planned Parenthood, tried to kill the Speaker of the House's husband, plotted to kidnap the governor, nailed pipe bombs to Democratic Party leadership, and launched an insurrection on the US Capitol. The number of FBI investigations into white supremacist and anti-government terrorism tripled during Trump's first term to become the #1 terrorist threat in the US, dwarfing the number of ISIS cases. Social media and misinformation have been weaponized to appeal to our biases, divide us for political gain, incite violence, and manipulate us into supporting people and policies that work against our best interests, which is why propaganda exists in the first place, to sell us beliefs that benefit someone else. As Steve Bannon once said, the way to deal with the media is to flood the zone with shit. And as we've seen firsthand, shit makes great fertilizer. So in my book, I go into detail about the 5 main characteristics of propaganda, like how it ignores the full picture in favor of black and white narratives that appeal to our unconscious cognitive biases, to evoke negative emotions like fear or outrage, that divide us into market segments of in groups and out groups, all for the economic benefit of the power class. But since we don't have time to go into all of those in greater detail, I will leave you with 3 things to look for when encountering dubious media messages. So number 1, propaganda nearly always appeals to negative emotions. By triggering a negative emotional reaction, media manipulators can override our critical thinking. And no emotion overrides critical thinking more than fear. Like fear that drinking glasses might be unsanitary, fear of a home invasion that prompts you to purchase a handgun, fear that vaccines might cause autism, or fear of immigrants bringing drugs or crime. By riling up negative emotions like fear, propaganda ensures that people fail to think, only to feel. So fear, like anger or hate, translates emotion into motion, moving people to act on that fear, like buying a handgun to feel safe, even though it makes us 3 times more likely to die from a gunshot wound, or voting for politicians who want to limit immigration, even though immigrants are far less likely to commit crime than native-born citizens. So if it's scary, be wary, because a raw appeal to fear is often used to cover a lack of evidence that a real threat exists. From making people think Haitian immigrants are eating our cats and dogs, to scaring people into thinking drag queens are somehow grooming our children. Because if you don't have facts on your side, you cannot rely on logic or reason. You have to appeal to emotion. That's how politicians get people to reject policies that would otherwise benefit them. And that's why emotional appeals are a hallmark of propaganda and partisan media. So traditional newscasters didn't show emotion when delivering the news back in the day. They were trained to be objective and detached from their subject matter. Think of Dan Rather, Walter Cronkite, or Edward R. Murrow. Or if you're not familiar with any of them, think of The Simpsons' Kent Brockman, who's monotone and stoic, just like professional journalists were once trained to be. But on Fox and other partisan media, the anchors convey emotion with each segment. That emotion is always negative and always related to outrage, which is the Fox News brand and business model. Just watch any given program on the network, past or present. You can identify the negative emotion underpinning their delivery. As Adolf Hitler famously said, I use emotion for the many and reserve reason for the few. So emotional awareness is key to recognizing propaganda, especially when it is of a political nature. So notice if someone is trying to stir up negative emotions by demonizing their opponents or trying to elicit anger over some sort of situation, like inflation or immigration. Are politicians running on solutions to those problems, or are they just exploiting the problem for political power? For instance, are they running on concrete policies for immigration reform? Or are they just riling up fears about illegal immigrants or border crisis? Are they fear-mongering about rising crime rates? Or are they trying to eliminate the conditions that lead to crime, like poverty? Are they complaining about how their opponent has done nothing to solve homelessness? Or are they presenting proposals to actually house the homeless? People running on solutions usually inspire us to act based on positive emotions that appeal to our core values. So consider for a moment, what positive emotional values drive people to support a strong social safety net, like say student loan forgiveness, universal health care, or health care for all? This is a question. What would you say, what emotional value underscores your support for those things?
Unity.
Yes. Exactly. So empathy, altruism,
Yes.
charity, selflessness, sense of community. What values drive people to support regulations for clean water, environmental pollution, or curbing climate change?
Health. I would hope so.
Health, yes. Self-preservation, health,
Yeah.
justice, sense of social responsibility, hope and a better future. And what values drive people to support legal protections for marginalized groups like women or LGBTQ, equal pay for equal work, or protecting voting rights?
Justice.
Yes, justice, equality, fairness, you get the picture. But when people in power exploit our anger, hate, or fear, it should be a red flag. They're trying to manipulate us, just like Hitler and other demagogues have done for centuries. In the words of Steve Bannon again, Anger and fear is what get people to the polls, which is why they make us hate fictional welfare queens who are supposedly mooching off the system. Or they make us angry that today's students shouldn't get their debt forgiven because we had to pay our own debt, even though college was a fraction of the cost back in the day. And it's why they make us fear the universal child care and health care socialists in order to protect the profits of big pharma and the health insurance industry. It's why they make people fear climate regulation and pollution standards will lead to job loss and plant closures, and why they spread doubt in the science, protect the profits of big oil. And it's why they make us angry about affirmative action or DEI or critical race theory by mischaracterizing a leg up to a level playing field as an unfair advantage. And it's why they spread fears of voting fraud in order to chip away at the voting rights of minorities.
Propaganda.
Which brings us to number 2. Notice when those negative emotions are used to divide us into in-groups and out-groups, creating an us versus them dynamic. This is what demagogues and fascists do to amass power. So directing people's anger at a helpless scapegoat is yet another tactic from Hitler's playbook. Nothing is easier than getting people to hate someone who's different. So beware anytime someone in power tries to pit the populace against each other, especially if they are punching down, such as the poor for abusing the welfare system, but not at corporations for abusing corporate welfare, or illegal immigrants committing crime, but not the crimes of the rich and powerful. There's a reason we see a headline proclaiming that immigrants are taking our jobs, but we never see a headline about how American companies hire immigrant workers under the table because they can pay them a sub-minimum wage. So always beware of any media message that directs our economic frustrations onto the poor or some other powerless scapegoat, as they are often used to distract the working class from challenging the ruling class. Which brings us to number 3. For any given media message, simply ask, who benefits by me believing this? Learn to question what the message is selling and who benefits by it. Who benefits from the belief that global warming is a hoax? Fossil fuel industry. Who benefits from the belief that universal health care is socialist? Private health insurance companies. Who benefits from the belief there is widespread voter fraud? Politicians who can't get elected without restricting the votes of minorities. Who benefits from the belief that tax cuts for the wealthy stimulate the economy, but tax money spent on social services for the poor will cause them to become lazy dependents? Who benefits by the belief that inflation was fueled by our meager stimulus checks and not the record profits of corporations, which hit a 70-year high? Who benefits from a meme that assures us that what goes around comes around after we've witnessed a grave injustice or an abuse of power? Maybe it's just the people abusing the power, because the meme suggests we don't have to do the hard work holding the powerful accountable. Just let the universe sort that out. So the more you start questioning who benefits by the messages we consume, whether it's an ad for a soft drink or an old adage you've heard a million times, the more you find that more often than not, it tends to work in favor of the rich and powerful. Because that's where propaganda comes from. Those whose money, power, and privilege are threatened by change, whether that change is getting off fossil fuels to fight global warming, a growing majority-minority US population, a reckoning with our racial past, or a robust social safety net to alleviate poverty. Hence why we're manipulated to doubt climate science, malign immigrants, or fear DEI. It's all about power. Welfare recipients, minorities, and immigrants have little to no power. So I will leave you with one last thought. Understand any problem in society. Always look at who benefits by it and not who suffers from it. Thank you. Okay, I'll just do one more thing before we open up to Q&A. If we have any educators in here or their teachers. So the book, we have a class guide that the publisher developed to be used in school for like middle grade or high school. So if anyone's interested, it's on my website, so I can give you guys, actually, I can put it up there. There's the, all of my information, so feel free to hit me up or follow me. Or yes, I'm everywhere.
Are you on Facebook?
Yeah, I just don't post very often. Or more than that, I'll post when I have something to share, but I don't read anything. I try not to scroll. I ignore everything. So anyway.
All right.
So let's give another round of applause. And very, very relevant information. Like I said, multi-generational, knowing your history, because history is repeating itself when we have access to the most information ever. So I am looking in the crowd right now, and I know I have people who know the Dewey Decimal System, and I have people who do not. I have people who have to look up things in encyclopedias, and I have people who do not. But we, at this point, every single one of you have access to the world's information in your hand. You can actually separate fact from fiction in your hand. However, that takes too much time, right? So like he said, that he shared something very, very scary with us, which is the algorithms, right? Those algorithms are, while I don't want people to fear technology, technology is actually how we're going to advance as a society. Hi, Shannon. But it is when corporations weaponize algorithms against us. And that's exactly what's happening. So as we are approaching the 2026 midterms, and now we already are seeing political advertisements, now you're going to be able to ask you who benefits from this. And ask your parents or your kids or anyone who's just kind of blindly following what they see on TV. When they get emotional, we're going to ask them what? I'm just, anyway, who has any questions? Mr. Tuttle.
We're in a, here are, some of us are, as an avocation in the business of politics. It's a wearing that hat.
Yeah.
There are other chairmen of political group. So if we're interviewing, and this club is a very active club. We interview people for.
You're being asked to project.
I'm being asked to project.
Rick, I know.
After a year, all right, well, hell. Are you kidding? Oh, the people, I want to be careful. I want to, this is a question. Can you hear me? All right, until I bring it, I can bring it. Good. That's good. Wow, Brad, that's his Vito, Norman, bounce his voice off the top. Okay, here we go. Vito Marcatonio. So, we interview people. I'm gonna feel out. We interview folks and ask them tough questions. We're very happy with our member of Congress, by the way, but speaking of Senate candidates, congressional candidates, we're represented by two members, actually. Now that I think about it, Oklahoma City has two congressional members, and we take a larger stand. Should we put on the agenda prescriptively, in other words, to do something about it, two rather straightforward items? One, restore the Fairness Act. It's legislation. What's been undone can be redone. It's not an executive order, it's a congressional or court order, it's a congressional decision signed by the President of the United States. So that should we put that on the agenda for candidates? The other is adherence. I'm a little less sure of the vocabulary, but there is a section such and such, and I wasn't taking notes.
230.
Which has to do with the legal exposure of these out there. Now, balancing First Amendment considerations with the right to get some kind of control over this hate speech, should we also ask our people appearing before us, but I mean, if the club agrees, that we should reinstate that as well? But those two things help in this debate.
I think. So yeah, all right. So yeah, I'll restate the question too. All right. So the question is, would reinstating the fairness doctrine and striking down Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act,
That's what
would that go a long way to improving things? I don't know about the fairness doctrine. I don't know how realistic that could be in this age because of the internet. Even if it worked on the air, even if it worked on cable news or the news, it may. I'm not sure. The practicality of that I don't know, but I do think striking down Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act and holding all internet providers and social media platforms to the same strict requirements that print media has. Absolutely. I think overnight you would see, if those companies think they're going to be held liable for a girl committing suicide because she was bullied on their platform, you better believe they will get their butt in gear overnight and have the right, the right internal teams that are monitoring hate speech and violence and all that stuff. I think the only reason they haven't done it is because, too many people are benefiting from the BS. So to have the political will means having people in Congress that aren't benefiting from all of the BS. To me, that's the tricky part. But absolutely, I think, to me, accountability is probably the best thing, because, with Fox News and the lawsuits. So if enough people can keep suing them for defamation, the problem is that I wouldn't have settled if I was Dominion Voting Systems. I would have made them have to correct on air the same number of times that they lied. So if they lied 90,000 times or whatever, then they need to make that correction on air, because their viewers have no clue about the lawsuit. The lawsuit means nothing to them. The money means nothing to the viewer. So if the outlets that are being held accountable do not have to retract in the same way that they lie, then what good does it do? Yes, it hurts them in the pocketbook, but it has to be beyond it. It absolutely needs to hurt them in the pocketbook. But their audience has to become aware that they've been manipulated lives.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next question. Yes.
But these mergers are going to be happening, CNN and all that, if you agree on this. And also, I want to ask you a personal question. I don't feel like answering this. I'm really curious, what's your background? Because this research is incredible.
Oh, yeah. So, the first question was about, the mergers. Yeah, the other thing that could go a long way that I think is even better than the fairness doctrine is breaking up all of the big tech companies. All of entertainment, I would break up Disney. I used to work for Disney, but no one should have that much IP. So it's the lack of competition in all of these. I was hearing people talking last night about how if Paramount did purchase Warner Brothers, then the ultra conservative guy would now have control of CNN, which means it would become another Fox News. So if you have, 3 right-wing billionaires on all of the news outlets, then that is just not good for democracy or the public, period. So I think you have to break up all of the big companies, regardless of the industry. That's the only way to ensure fair competition, cheaper services.
Let the market do a little work.
Yes, so we have antitrust laws for a reason. The problem is that the people right now in the White House and Congress, if anything, they would block the Netflix acquisition, because CNN then would not be. A lot of it may go back to who's controlling the media, the news networks. So for the entertainment industry, all acquisitions are bad, because all they're going to do is lay off half to all the employees in one of those places. And so now the entertainment industry, which already employs the fewest number of people in 30 or 40 years, is going to be even worse. So as far as my background, yes, I think. So I went to LSU, Louisiana State University, in mass communication. So my bachelor's and master's is in media management, communication. And so I feel like my background was more PR, journalism. But then I took a detour and went to work at Lucasfilm for a very long time, and then left Lucasfilm to focus on my own creative writings. And so I write scripts and screenplays and all kinds of stuff. And then around 2015, 16, my writings became more, I kind of harkened back to my journalism roots. I was writing more about socioeconomics, and my book has a lot of socioeconomics in there, like why our inequality is so bad. The trickle down economics, the change in politics, the Southern strategy. So I had so many conversations with friends and family in 2015 and 2016 where I realized they all believe things that were not true. And I was constantly shocked. Like otherwise intelligent people, people with PhDs, former teachers and professors of mine, I was just constantly dumbfounded that so many people believe all of the lies and misinformation that circulated during that election year, which to me and most people here in LA was pretty obvious. Like you could see through the BS, and to realize that all of my friends and family back home could not see through the BS just kind of had me scratching my head and figuring out how do you get through to them? What all is it for keeping them deceived? And so the book kind of came out of a lot of those conversations, but also seeking to understand all of the things at play that keep people misinformed. And so it's media literacy, it's our psychology, it's emotional manipulation, and then it's understanding power structures and where propaganda comes from, who benefits by it, and such. And so that became the book pretty much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes.
Well, two parts. One is kind of an observation that the tactics that used with propaganda is the same of the narcissist. It was interesting to me. But I actually wondered your take on the idea that a lot of the conglomerates, even studios, are failing. That they're no longer actually able to compete in our market where you can actually go into an echo chamber of your own bias, where because a studio, they kind of appeal to the common denominator. They can't really appeal to everyone of an individual state. So there's almost like a democratization of media in a way outside of that of the major studios. I kind of wondered what your take on that is.
Yeah, we're in a really weird stage because, right, people aren't going to the theater as much. They're watching stuff at home. Entities keep getting bought and sold. So I feel like we're in such a weird state of transition or flux with the industry, and I honestly don't know how it's going to net out or what the solution is. It just seems like a lot of traditional media, like network TV, doesn't even seem to be trying to save itself. Like there was no fall TV stuff. Like, what are you doing, people? Yeah, so I don't know all my friends are in entertainment and everybody's like, what's going on? They're not making enough, they're not producing enough. Everything's becoming way more formulaic on network and all the cool creative stuff is streaming. So who knows? I don't know. I definitely don't have an answer for that.
Sure. Oh, we can take one more question just because we're going to be wrapping up here in a second. Okay. Oh, I see one more. Second.
All right.
Bring it up, but don't you think AI is going to make everything even worse?
Yes. Yeah, I don't even know how to address the AI because it's so new, and I don't even think we can quite comprehend how it's gonna. Yes, I can't imagine it's gonna make anything better. It's only gonna make things more problematic, especially as it becomes more and more difficult to tell what's not real. So yeah, it's just one that it's evolving so fast that I don't even know.
Well, I want to thank all of you guys for now. Thank you so much for sharing your well thought out. Wow. Somebody finally said it. He said what hadn't been said. Huh? And yes, and you put
I wish I could take credit for the art, but I had a illustrator.
You put pictures in the book, and I appreciate that. My earthing brain.
Fully illustrated.
Yes. So speaking of fully illustrated, it is fully here, right over here by the register. So if you would like to purchase this book and actually see more about how to win this war on truth, and maybe get an autograph of the copy by the author who just happens to be right here, live in person, not an AI algorithm. I encourage you to do so. The books are right here by the register. You'll see it. They're propped up How to Win the War on Truth. And this whole weekend, if you mention Culver City Democratic Club, we will get a portion of the proceeds. This is a pop-up fundraiser. So we really appreciate your support for everything local author, local Dem Club, local bookstore, local everything. We're loving local this weekend. Woo! Thank you guys so much for coming. We really enjoyed all of you, and I know you guys enjoyed this talk, and we hope to bring you more in the future. And Samuel, have you probably coming back to speak to our club as we get more into this election heat. And then if people do want to reach out to you, if they at you, said you might not read it, but
No, I'll read your messages.
okay,
I just don't read the
the propaganda.
yes.
All right, he doesn't read the propaganda, but if you do,
Always read messages.
he reads messages. So I think that it would be very good to hear from you later on once the political propaganda train really starts up. So if you think